open our minds, our hearts, into the lessons we shall learn today. We specifically ask that the good spirits help our dear friend Sue deliver her talk with clarity, with love, so that we can all take the messages home, and as always, more importantly, put them into practice in the days that come. Again, we thank you so much, and so be it. So I'll pass on to Sue for the talk today. Thank you.
Okay, so good morning, everyone. Welcome. Today we are going to talk about the chapter 41 from this book, Living Spring. It is a book that we do like short reflections on Thursdays for the spiritual treatment that we have here at the center. And so I just took that and expanded a little bit. And so hopefully it's a very beautiful chapter that talks about facing our difficulties and our struggles and the challenges that we all face. And I feel like we all face difficult challenges, trials. And so the question is, how prepared are we to face those trials? So it starts, this book, each chapter starts with a passage, and here we have this one from a letter written to Hebrews, for which there is no known author. But the letter is a very beautiful letter, and it says, I will never leave you nor forsake you. So this particular item 13 from the letter talks about, is basically a series of ethical recommendations for anyone who wants to maybe refer back to it. And so you have recommendations about brotherly love and hospitality, marriage and purity. Jumping to number 4, remember your leaders, avoid strange teachings, sacrifices pleasing to God, obey your leaders, prayer, requests, and blessings. And on verses 5 and 6, it reads, avoid the love of money, be content with what you have. God has said, I will never leave you nor forsake you. So we can confidently say, the Lord is my helper, I will not fear. So Emmanuel is going to comment about this passage. So what we're going to do today is we're going to read together so we can have a sense of the gist and the entire comment by Emmanuel. And then we're going to go back and we're going to break it down, and we're going to link Emmanuel with Joana de Angelis, the author Joana de Angelis, and use Joana to explore the ideas that Emmanuel brings to us. So again, I'm going to read through the message so we all have a sense of the message in its entirety. So it says, the word of the Lord does not refer only to sustaining one's physical life on the stony climb of the ascent. Much more than food for the body, we need food for the spirit. The cells of the body may experience hunger and clamor for ordinary soup, but the necessities and wishes, impulses, and emotions of the soul often cause immeasurable afflictions, demanding ampler spiritual nourishment. There are times when our innermost reserves are profoundly depleted. Our strength seems exhausted, and our hopes retreat in apathy. Darkness invades our soul, and as if we were enveloped in dark night. And as happens to nature under the mantle of night, even though we have springs of understanding and flowers of goodwill in the vast expanse of our inner world, everything remains veiled by the fog of our troubles. However, Even then, the All-Merciful does not abandon us completely to the darkness of our doubts and disappointments. Just as he makes effulgent stars shine in the sky, unveiling a constellated pathway of the firmament to the traveler lost in the world, he also lights the fire of new convictions and loftier aspirations in the sky of our ideals, so that our spirit does not get lost on its journey towards higher life. I will never leave you nor forsake you, promises the divine goodness, neither loneliness nor abandonment. Heavenly providence continues watching over us. Therefore, let us hold to the comforting certainty that every storm is followed by a tranquil atmosphere and that there is never a night without the dawn. It's a really beautiful and consoling message from Emmanuel. So we're gonna again get back to the message. I'm gonna and begin from the beginning. The word of the Lord does not refer only to sustaining one's physical life on the stony climb of the ascent. Much more than food for the body, we need food for the spirit. So I thought that was interesting when Emmanuel says much more, because if we think about our lives and how we live, the needs of our physical body are on the forefront of our existence. We are immersed in a material reality. Our bodies, our physiological needs are very much part of our consciousness, and it needs to be that way because we need to be able to attend to those needs in order to survive, right? But he puts the needs of the spirit above the needs of the physical body, much more. And so that calls for an effort on our part to pay attention to those needs. The body will signal hunger, thirst, discomfort with the temperature, but so does our soul. Our soul will signal, will feel fatigue, will feel depleted, will feel anxious, will feel depressed, will feel chronically sad, will feel disturbed, will feel imbalanced. So all those are signs of the soul trying to warn us before things become more complicated and difficult, that we need to pay attention to what our soul is communicating to us. A lot of times we'll override those needs and we'll prioritize our physical needs and the needs of our daily material lives, compromising our mental and spiritual health. Then he talks about the cells of the body may experience hunger and clamor for ordinary soup. And then he talks about, so our soul has needs, necessities, has wishes, has impulses, has emotions that can cause immeasurable afflictions demanding ampler spiritual nourishment. Not only spiritual nourishment, but lots of attention, lots of TLC, right? Emotions, we carry a number of emotions. A lot of times, in all of us, bring emotions that have been unattended from, let's say, our childhood. We all have survived our childhoods because our parents did their very best, but they were and are, like us, imperfect beings. They only provide us what they could provide us, in the same way that we are today providing our children what we can provide, which is not perfect, far from that. So each one of us have survived our parents in our childhood, even when we think that our parents were the best. And a lot of times the ways that we survive our parents is by creating defense mechanisms that help us to grow, but that remain that pain, that need, that hunger for love, for attention, whatever ways we found to survive, controlling, pleasing, buffering our fears. We transition in adulthood, but a lot of us carry those emotions unattended. When we become adults, we're invited to, now that we are mature, to look back at those emotions and to seek to address them from an adult place, caring for ourselves in the way that our parents could not care. And when we fail to do that, a lot of time those emotions will become pathologies. Those emotions will become fears that we don't understand, will become panic, will become all kinds of psychiatric disorders that we see in our society nowadays, calling for that, calling for an adult that's willing to look back at that child that has many unmet needs and take care of it. And this is the needs that need that spiritual nourishment, that need that attention, because emotion, spiritual, material, it's always spiritual at the very end. It's all has a spiritual purpose, right? So there are times when our innermost reserves are profoundly depleted. So this is a point in the text of Emmanuel that I think it's really interesting, because we humans in our stage of evolution, right, we become depleted. And we're going to talk a little bit about reserves and building reserves and how can we better prepare ourselves. But this is a reality. I think all of us, I can probably say, and if you don't fit into this category, forgive me, but I think that all of us probably have experienced moments where we felt, I have nothing left in me. That you feel profoundly exhausted. And when we are that depleted and that exhausted, the natural movement of the soul is to withdraw. So many of the psychiatric disorders that we see is ways in which the soul withdraws from living, from engaging. So we protect ourselves. We say, I can't handle this. And you go back into a hole where you become somewhat, more or less, depending on the severity of the situation, paralyzed. So that's what Emmanuel is talking about here. So hope retreats in apathy. Darkness invades our soul as if we're enveloped in a dark night. So it's that state of darkness that, again, it's very human. It's very much part of where we are in our evolution. And I think one of the important things about this passage is to acknowledge that this is part of our reality. We may experience that one time in life, many times in life. It really depends on our trajectory. So here is where I start bringing some ideas from Joanna de Angelis that can actually help illustrating this passage here, this reality of the hopes retreating into apathy and darkness invading the soul. So what are some of the pictures that we see in our daily lives, and how does Joanna, who has a very psychological approach to spiritism, what are the items, how she demonstrates this to us. So here she talks, and I pull quotes from many different books. So here she talks about anxiety. Anxiety is a state of conflict between what one is and what one would like to be. It results from insecurity and lack of self-acceptance. So this is not all the explanation for anxiety, right? So again, this is taken from different books and different texts, but it gives us a little bit of understanding that a lot of times the anxiety that we feel comes from this conflict. Especially for us as spiritists, we have an idea of where we need to be. Sometimes we have an expectation that we should be at a certain place, but we are not there. And so this conflict between where I imagine I need to be and where I am the lack of self-acceptance and understanding that your knowledge does not make you ready for the manifestation of it. Rather, it takes a lot of time in between knowing and feeling and manifesting, and this is a process. So when we have a difficult time accepting where we truly are, that generates a lot of anxiety. Depression, in many cases, is the result of loss of meaning for life, of the emptiness that follows frustration, and the absence of inner values truly lived. Again, this is not all the explanation, and she said in many cases, right? But again, just something for us to reflect. As we go through our lives, from moment to moment, there are different meanings, right? So when you were a teenager, life has one meaning. When you're working, a lot of times the meaning of life is work. A lot of us has a lot of investment in our working. I think about this almost every day, to be very honest. I see myself working quite a bit because I love working and I absolutely love what I do. But I also think the day that I can no longer work, maybe it will come to a point that I can no longer work, because you never know what's going to happen to you in life, right? Or the moment that I decide not to work, what's left, right? What's going to be the meaning of my life at that point? I reflect on that and I find myself preparing for that. And sometimes I talk to people about that. I talk to my sister about that. My sister's life is her work, and she's very dedicated to caring for my mom and for her son. Well, in 10 years, maybe neither one of them will be there. What will be the meaning of her life? How she's going to feel that time and all the energy that goes into those two tasks? Because the meaning of life cannot be laid upon anything that's outside of us. It needs to come from within, because all those things will pass. So this type of reflection, I think it's important. Excessive self-demand without the corresponding emotional maturity generates states of anguish and discouragement. Again, she will talk a lot about this lack of alignment, right, between what we expect, what we demand from ourselves, and our ability to actually live, incorporate, integrate all those philosophical ideas into values and behaviors. And so this process, if not taken with compassion and self-love, can definitely generate a lot of distress and anxiety in our lives. So she talks about unworked emotions, which I did mention. We all bring a number of emotions. We all have a number of emotions. Unworked emotions, even when the individual is intellectually enlightened, erupt in the form of anxiety, fear, or depression. So you may know a whole lot. You may have a very sharp cognitive understanding of life, of theories. You can be studying, you can cite Kardec, for example, questions. You know many books, but you can be illiterate when it comes to your inner reality. You can be basically living in a level of automaticity that really is like completely blind to your emotional needs. And so a lot of times people who are very anxious, people who are very controlling, for example, and I say that because I have that in me, right? People who are constantly like, if like, it was funny. We have a situation in our house we have one cat and we have two dogs. Now the cat broke the tail, so the cat needs to be in the house, and so we have locked the doggy door. That has affected the dog's routine. And I'm walking with my wife, and we're talking about that, and I said, this is very distressing because it really affects the dog's routine, and the dog now is, it's just like, sweetie, you're projecting. It has affected your routine and you are having a hard time with that. And I'm like, yeah, you're right about that, right? So that's what happens when you live with a psychologist. There's really no break. So, but it's great, right? It's great because, so that's what we do. We project our own stuff, our own, ways of living. And so a lot of times she'll say to me, the need to control, the need to have everything in place, and this drive speaks a lot about your inability to bear the discomfort of the disorganized environment where you were in at some point. So healing goes through bearing the feelings, letting go of your defenses, and actually bearing the feeling of feeling disorganized, because we are all disorganized. There is no real organization and control. We are at the mercy of a much higher organization force, much wiser, much more loving than our own illusions of control and organization, right? So as long as I'm not willing, and I'm talking about myself, to just bear the discomfort, you keep organizing the world outside, you keep biting your nails, you keep running like there's no tomorrow, because it's hard to stop, it's hard to bear the discomforts of the emotions that we bring within ourselves. Okay, enough of myself. But I like to talk about those things because otherwise it feels very philosophical and far away from us. The human being lives divided between desire and duty, between aspiration and habit, generating conflict that, when prolonged, becomes suffering. Anguish arises from insecurity before life, from the fear of the future, and from the difficulty of trusting in the divine order. So we all experience that. We know so much. I feel like us as spiritists, we have a lot of knowledge, and yet many of us fear the future. Many of us do not trust God. That is the truth. I mean, we do, but we don't. We do a little bit, but we don't do at the core, because anxiety has a lot to do with lack of trust. Has a lot to do with our need to control life. When we are fully able to surrender, when we really, it's not that we're going to be inactive. We are going to continue to try to do what we have to do, what we are called to do, but we are less preoccupied with the outcomes, because we understand that the outcomes will be what needs to be once we are doing our part, right? And we learn to flow with the outcomes. We learn to understand that, yes, we are doing our part, but there is this powerful force that is really acting continuously and bringing precisely the things and the experiences and the circumstances and the people and the results that we need. And then, this is the last one, to know the truth and not live it generates inner conflict. To demand from oneself beyond one's emotional capacity produces imbalance. Only gradual transformation with self-love and perseverance leads to psychological health. So we live in a society where we are very much used to quick responses. You touch a screen and something happens and something opens. You're constantly, we're in a hurry. But when it comes to inner transformation, when it comes to spiritual growth, there is nothing fast about it. On the contrary. So sometimes we may say, I want to get this done in this lifetime, but maybe this is a project for a few lifetimes. So the important thing is to, if we want to be more psychologically healthy, is to understand that what we are doing today, it is our very best. There are things that we want to be or places that we want to achieve, and they will come. But a lot of times there is incredible discrepancy between what you know and what you are emotionally capable to do. And the biggest challenge is that when your body is hungry, you know your body is hungry. But most of us, is blind to the needs of our soul, to our own wounds, to our own limitations. And so it really becomes challenging to manage this discrepancy, because sometimes we think that we are more able than we actually are. Many individuals, upon recognizing their imperfections, begin to afflict themselves excessively instead of working patiently on self-transformation. When the individual becomes aware of their own shortcomings without the necessary emotional resources to deal with them, they may fall into stages of anguish and self-recrimination. So those really talk about the necessity of self-love and compassion, patience with our own selves. And it's a work of humbling ourselves. We have an illusion of being in a place and able to do things that it's a fallacy. It's not real. So a lot of times what we need to do in order to be psychologically healthy is to step down and say, this is who I am and this is where I am, and there's nothing wrong with that. I have to be patient with myself. So if I would say what is the most important thing for psychological health is self-love. It's not something that I'm saying to myself, oh, it's okay to continue to err. It's okay. I'm not excusing myself from my shortcomings, but I am treating myself with kindness, with patience, with understanding. I'm using my philosophical understanding of evolution to apply to myself in first place. And that is absolutely important, because the way I treat myself, I will treat others. So the way that I am rigid with others, the way that I am judgmental with others, it's always a reflection on how I am treating myself. And so Emmanuel continues. And as happens to nature under the mantle of night, even though we have springs of understanding and flowers of goodwill in the vast expanse of our inner world, everything remains veiled by the fog of our troubles. So yes, so we talk about all those things that create the darkness in us. And then we may say to yourself, but I know so much. I shouldn't be doing this. I shouldn't be feeling this way. And Emmanuel is telling, yes, you have springs of understanding, so much understanding into yourself. You have the flowers, you have the virtues, you have the goodwill, you have the willingness in your inner world. But all this stuff now is kind of blocked. There is a fog that makes it hard for you to access and to optimize it in your own favor. However, he continues, even then they're all merciful, so God never abandons us, right, completely to the darkness of our doubts and disappointments. So in speaking of God, Joanna reminds us that God is present in all moments of life, even when the creature absorbing their conflicts does not perceive him. So it may very well be moments that, and I have said this before, a particular time in my life, I mean, being spiritist from birth, God has always been part of my life in something that I call upon very often, the presence of God. But I remember going through this particular phase in my life where I was actually undergoing analysis. So 4 times a week in the therapist's office, which is amazing, by the way, and I'll tell you why. You go the first time, you tell the therapist what happened the week before. You go the second day, you elaborate a little bit more on what happened to you. By the third day, there's nothing else to say. You lie in discomfort. And the therapist said to you, whatever comes to your mind, you say it without judgment. It's terrifying, but it's incredible, because little by little, stuff comes up. Stuff from the subconscious, stuff from the unconscious. And you may say, I hate being here in this silence. I'm in complete discomfort. And the therapist will say, tell me more about it. And then you go. It's an amazing process, but you have to be extremely courageous. And I was in this process, and I was in so much pain one day that I said I was running, and while I was running, I was crying. And while I was crying, I was saying to myself, God, where are you? And it was the first time and the only time in my life that I couldn't feel God, or I was like, perhaps desperate for God. But what Joanna tells us is that, yes, so there will be those moments of incredible pain and suffering that you may not be able because you're so distressed. But God is always there. The sensation of abandonment results from inner disturbance, not from divine distance, because God is everywhere, including within ourselves. Divine providence manifests itself through innumerable resources that sustain life, even when the individual does not recognize their origin. So many things happen in our lives, so many resources come to our lives, and we may not even realize the work of God behind all of that. God does not withdraw from the creature. It is the creature who, through imbalance, loses the capacity to feel him. Now, I like this sentence a lot. Faith that depends on emotional consolation is still fragile. True faith sustains itself even in the silence of the divine, because sometimes the best answer is silence. Jesus was silenced many times. He didn't speak all the time. So sometimes it needs to be silence for us to be able to hear the voice of God from within. A lot of times, we seek God, and we want to see God because we want to receive a sign or a word or something that brings consolation to our souls. But there are times that it will be only silence, because perhaps it is the way in which God says, I'm in you. And perhaps if you stop seeking for consolation from outside, you will find me in your heart, as a force, as a strength, as an inspiration, as a realization of your own potential, of your own strength. Going back to Emmanuel, he continues by saying, just as he makes effulgent stars shining in the sky, unveiling a constellated pathway of the firmament to the traveler lost in the world, he also lights the fire of new convictions and lofty aspirations in the sky of our ideals, so that our spirit does not get lost on its journey towards higher life. And the way in which God lights the fire of new convictions and lofty aspiration in the sky of our ideals is a lot of times through and in the moments of crisis. So Joanna is speaking about crisis. She will say, the painful experience of inner conflict is often the beginning of liberation, as it destabilizes rigid patterns and allows new ways of thinking to arise. So that's brilliant. Let's talk about, we talk about the defenses that we built as a child to be able to survive, right? Defenses, control, perfectionism, rigidity, or on the other end, someone who is unable, for example, to be assertive, lack of assertiveness. That person that's always on top of the wall cannot take a stance because it's too scary. So many defenses. Then comes a crisis, right? And the crisis will shake us, and a lot of times it will it will be that moment that those defenses are being broken. It opens cracks in our defense mechanisms and allows for new ideas, for new perceptions to arise. And that is the mechanism of crisis. And crisis, we may see, nobody likes to be in crisis. I'm not saying that it's a good thing to be in crisis. But we can always look at crisis as opportunities. If we are in a crisis, that means that life is shaking us and inviting us and giving us an opportunity for a deeper look and to restructure our thinking and to tap into different ideas or ways of living. So she continues to say, the breakdown of structures that no longer serve the spirit is a necessary step for the construction of a healthier inner life. So perhaps those defenses were necessary at one point, but now you are an adult. Now you are mature, you have grown up, you have a different understanding. So that in which was necessary when you were a child is no longer necessary right now. And it is our realization of that that allow us to let go of some of those patterns. So now we are free. We are free to be ourselves. We're free to express, to be less fearful, to be less controlling. So I look at I have 2 teenagers at home, and I went through a battle with them about organizing their room, right? If you have ever had a teenager, you understand what I'm talking about. So we have, luckily, we live in a very big house, and each one of us has a very separate area of the house. So now we're at the point in our process where I said to them, both of them, if you don't clean your room, it's okay. If this is how you want to live, that's fine. And I have a girl who comes to the house once a week to clean the house. So I said to them, but if your rooms look this way, your area will not be clean. It's an option. It's a choice. So she can use her time to clean better my room and my shower and, and do other things for me. And so last week it was not clean. And so that's okay. We're working with them on that. So last night my son brought 2 girls to the house, and then he told them, wait in the yard because I'm going to clean my room. And so he cleaned his room and then brought them into the house. So whatever works. But the thing is, it allows me also to witness a different way of living. And you know what? The world has not ended, And truly, truly, I'm not better than them in any way, shape, or form. It's just a different way. It's just a different way. So it has allowed me to break down some of my thinking, you see? Some of my thinking, to have new realizations. It feels like a crisis. Believe me, I have been extremely stressed with these situations. It seems very little, but on the day-to-day, they can become very loaded, right? Because also they are in the midst of many other things. But crisis. So a psychological and spiritual restructuring process in which old patterns dissolve so that new thoughts, convictions, and behaviors can emerge. So there is something very healthy about it if you are able to take advantage of what a crisis has to offer. And then we get to the sentence, I will never leave you nor forsake you, promises the divine goodness. Neither loneliness nor abandonment. Heavenly providence continues watching over us. Therefore, let us hold to the comforting certainty that every storm is followed by a tranquil atmosphere and that there is never a night without the dawn. I will never leave you nor forsake you, neither loneliness nor abandonment. Heavenly providence, God is always present in our lives. So Joanna is going to say, the apparent silence of God is in truth the voice of providence operating through life's laws. And divine providence is not external in distance, it operates within the individuals of the voice of conscience and the laws of life. So, two ways in which God is always present. God is present through the laws of the universe. They're always working, always operating to make sure that everything is in place. But God is within us, and we have the voice of our conscience that's constantly operating, and we have this strength. And I did say this in not so long ago. When I look at the force of nature, when you look at the destruction of something, and then in a place where everything seems destroyed, you see life coming back. Life is a powerful force, and we have this powerful force within us. So God is always present in different ways we can think about it, but certainly outside of us, inside of us, always present. In the best chapter in Spiritism that talks about divine providence and how it works is in Genesis, for anyone who wants to read and understand how God cared for us. So we're going to finish talking about how can we, because Emmanuel did refer, right, to building the reserves, how our reserves become extremely depleted from time to time. And so how do we go about that? One, let's all agree that no matter what we do, we are prone to those moments in our lives, and it's okay if they happen. The last thing that we're going to need is our own criticism or judgment, right? So the most important thing, if that's where we are, is that we act towards our own selves from a place of compassion and understanding and acceptance of our own humanity. That will provide us the base to move forward. That will be the base for us to stand up again. If beneath the crisis and the darkness is self-criticism and judgment, then most likely we will be stuck in place. We will be stuck in that kind of mud, right? Heaviness. But compassion and self-acceptance will create the best environment for us to get up again and to be able to move forward. But it is also important that we constantly think of building our spiritual reserves. A lot of people come to the Spiritist Center when they are in crisis. That means the reserve is depleted. And once the crisis is over, they go back to attending to their material needs without the appropriate attention to the spirit. When is it that you build the reserve? During the summer or during the winter? During the summer. During the summer of our lives, when things are going well. It should be the time that we are investing and dedicating in building our reserves, because you know for sure the winter will return. But most people still don't do that. They only come when absolutely depleted. So if we look at Jesus' recommendations, he says the wise man builds his house on the rock. The rains fall, the flood comes, but it does not fall. So the rock here is the inner formation, right? So all those intellectual understanding and knowledge that we have, they need to be solidified. Now, you need to make something solid, you need cement. Cement is the experiences. Cement is the little circumstances of our daily lives that allow us to bear witness of our own faith, to give testimony of the things that we talk about and that we believe. It is in this moment to moment in our daily lives that we build the structure, that we solidify what we know. what we know only becomes solidified when we are given an opportunity to testify, to put that into practice, and to see how that works, and to go through it. And as we are living our lives, we should, in every moment and circumstance, try to pull from our toolbox of knowledge and bring that to our day-to-day. And this is how we cement little by little and build the foundation of whatever we are building in our life on top of a rock. Then he talks about, do not store up for yourselves treasures on earth, but store up treasures in heaven. So he's pointing to a kind of inner capital here. So it's not about what we are accumulating outside, but it's the inner capital. So what is that we are building? What capital are we keeping in our own soul? Like compassion, like practicing forgiveness, exercising, again, our faith in the small moments of our life, the investment that we do in our goodness, in our kindness, in our patience. So you need to see every single person in your life who challenges you, for example, with your patience and with your compassion, as people who are there cooperating to your growth. We wouldn't grow wasn't for them. So we have to have appreciation for their presence in our lives. I know it sounds crazy, but it is actually true. Every single person who challenges us is someone who actually is contributing for us to actually exercise the very things that we talk about and that we believe. And that is the way that we build this inner capital. Keep your lamps burning. That comes from the parable of the virgins. And it talks about readiness. So what happens is when the groom comes, there are a number of virgins that had the oil and had the lamps ready, and a number of them who didn't and got caught by surprise. So keep the lamps burning means, again, don't wait for the moment of the crisis to attend to your spiritual needs. Make that part of your living, a philosophy of living. Put your spirit on the forefront of your priorities. Whoever wants to follow me must deny themselves, take up their cross daily. So take up your cross means accept what life brings in your way. We all going to face trials. We all going to have hurdles in our lives. The moment that we say, this shouldn't be happening with me, why with me, right? Now we are questioning the life's intelligence, so to speak. Life is bringing what we need to face. Life is working for our enlightenment. So not accepting life, not accepting what is in front of us creates another level of suffering. And then finally, my peace I give you, not as the world gives. So when we talk about that, there is a distinction between the worldly peace, meaning for a lot of people, to live in peace it's to live without problems. I want peace means I want my life with no problems at all. I want my life with no difficulties at all. That's not the peace that Jesus came to offer us. The peace that he came to offer us is the ability to undergo the trials of life while maintaining a sense of equilibrium, a sense of harmony, or at least go to the trials of life grounded in our faith, grounded in the understanding that these too will pass, in the understanding that I can do all things on the one who gives me the strength. And so there will be days that we're going to be down. There will be days that we can't think. Or maybe there will be moments of that. But we can always retrieve back to this idea, I will never leave you nor forsake you. And we can repeat and we can make that a mantra in our minds. The Lord is my helper, I will not fear. And use that as a strength to get up and to persevere. Because only the ones who will persevere will find the peace that they are looking for. That's it. Thank you.